The examples in this video are going to challenge you a little bit because there's words involved and there's ideas where we're going to need to add or subtract different volumes together. Okay, so here we have to drill a cubical hole, but it's not really going to be a cube, is it? Because if we were going to drill a hole all the way through, it would need to go all the way through till the end of this particular piece of wood. So that's a little bit confusing. But the actual shape is going to be a rectangular prism. Okay, that's quite tricky to get our heads around. There's a 1 meter cylindrical piece of wood, right? So this piece of wood is 1 meter. And then the diameter of the whole thing, the whole cylinder, is 16 centimeters. So I've already got a problem with 16 and with 1 meter. Let's change that to 100 centimeters instead. And then the 16 is the diameter. So remember that with cylinders, I'm often dealing with radius. So that's fine. I might need to convert. So I'm just going to write there radius equals 8, just in case that's more helpful. And then that is 16 going all the way. But then they tell me that the sides of the cube, which is not quite a cube, those are 4. So that's 4, that's 4, they're all 4. Okay, so it does tell me a little bit more about the shape of that hole that is going to be drilled in there. Calculate the volume of wood that remains after you have drilled the hole. Right, so the volume of wood in this case is going to equal the volume of the cylinder minus the volume of the hole. And the hole is a rectangular prism. Okay, so that means my volume of wood, I'm just going to call that V for now, is going to be, what is the formula for cylinder? It's going to be pi r squared h minus the length times breadth times height, which is that rectangular prism. The trick is going to be in figuring out what my different numbers are. So here I've got pi, and I knew I was going to use r and not diameter. So it's going to be pi times 8 squared, and then the height, this thing is lying on its side, so you'd be forgiven for thinking that the height was that 16, but it's not. Remember that the height is going to be the height or the distance from the one circle to the other. So, height of the whole prism. Height is 100. And brackets means times, minus the length and breadth and height of that hole. It's going to be 4 times the 4 times that whole distance all the way to the end, which is the 100. Okay, the most difficult part is done pretty much. Now we're just going to be typing things into a calculator. This gets me to 6,400 pi. The other side is 1,600, which means my answer is 18506,19 centimeters cubed. Because I was working in centimeters from the beginning, and I've rounded off to 2 decimal places. Now I need to calculate the volume of these two. Right, there's a lot going on here. Every time they've given me one of these means that I'm dealing with the same length, which they've told me is 5. Right, that means all of those are 5. Everything is a 5 that has one little mark on it. Okay, but what's missing? What's missing is here on this side. We don't know how long that is, but we do know something further, and I'm going to label everything that is 1 centimeter. Let's label those in a different color. So that's 1, which means that is 1, this is 1. Let me make an extra construction, and I can then know that that is 1 and this is 1. So my total here will be the 5. There's the 5 plus the 1. That side is 6 centimeters long. And so what I'm going to do to add up the volumes is I'm going to do this block here, all the way including that. And then I'm going to do that block there, and I'm going to add them. So I'm going to say that my volume equals the long tall block plus the flat bit. So that's going to be a length times breadth times height. So that's going to be, let's look at it, 6 times the 1, and then I need to think, how far deep does it go? Goes all the way across there. That is 5. So that's going to be 6 times the 1 times the 5. And my other block is this one over here. There's 5 times 1 times the other measurement, which is 5. Again, the order of length and breadth and height is not important because we're multiplying everything. That gets me 30, and this gets me 25. So my total answer is 55 cubic centimeters. And if I'm making it look easy, it's simply because the actual calculation is the easy part. The difficult part in these questions is figuring out all the different labels that need to go everywhere and what you have to do to be able to get towards your answer. The second one is like a little house. And that volume you can see is going to be rectangular prism plus my roof, which is the little Toblerone shape, the triangular prism. Okay, so the first one is a length times breadth times height. And the second one is a half base times height times the length of the prism. Right, we better get some numbers going here. So they tell me that that is 5 at the bottom. So that means that's also 5 because it's measured. And of course, that is 5 at the top. I'm allowed to make that assumption. And all of these shorter lengths is going to be 5. Do I need to know that? Only if I was doing surface area. And if I did, I'd have to use Pythagoras. But I don't for this question. So I know that that's 5 at the top, 5 at the bottom. And they've told me that the height is 2. So I've actually got enough to go on. Here I've got 20, which means that's 20, and that is 20 as well. Okay, length times breadth times height of the rectangular prism, the bit at the bottom, is going to be 5 times 5 times the 20. The triangular prism is going to be half base times height of the little triangle. So remember, this is going to be little h over there. Half the base of this triangle, I'm looking at the big one, the base is 5, so it's half times 5, brackets means times the perpendicular height, the little height, times the height of the prism, the big H, which is the 20. So I just want to clarify, that's the little height, and that one is the big height. Okay, let's work this out. That is going to be 500, and this part, when I multiply together, gives me 100. My answer then for the whole volume of the whole shape is 600